What's up, everybody? I'm Yogi Chris's Enlightened Masculinity podcast, coming to you on all the platforms: Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and everything else. Amazon. There's like 14 or 15 platforms we're on. So shout out to the podcast staff that makes that happen. Josiah makes the flyers. Officer Jeremiah does the posting. Tony Kazmiski schedules my guests when I have those guests. And I couldn't do what I do without the staff. So shout out to them. That's why they get shouted out. Everybody who listens to this should know who they are. Dang, this live video ended too. Man, why we had guests? Why would it just end? Anyway, I won't fuck with it because I'm just starting it on the tablet. That was the first live, so I'll fuck with it later. Welcome to the show. Today I'm talking about L. Ron Hubbard and game, and why I'm talking about LRH and game, besides the fact that I just want to. And that's what happens when you have a show that's 350 episodes deep, and I don't rely my income on my audience being there. So I can just talk about what I want to talk about. And success being my proof that I am one of, if not the most successful member of IMC Nation in how I've applied it to my life, how I've exchanged my life to be suitable for IMC tech, because I distilled down my life to some of the more important things. I used to think playing guitar was so important. I used to think walking my dog was so important. I used to think chasing pussy was so important. And though I don't have a dog anymore and I don't, what's the other thing, play the guitar anymore, really what was important was meditation and yoga. That's what I wanted to do more than anything. That's why I finished a PhD in engineering and decided to be a pro yogi. Who does that? And it wasn't for the attention. Everybody would give me attention like, oh, you're man. And a lot of times they'd have weird things to say, like just about the money or about, maybe you could do both, or, as if they could just have off the cuff suggestions for my life that I myself hadn't thought of already. I hadn't thought about being a yogi while I'd be an engineer. You're right. It just skipped my mind. I'm glad you said that, because I would have never thought of it if you, who I just met, would suggest it right now. So I had these experiences with yoga, and we'll get to L. Ron Hubbard, of course, real fast. But I had these experiences with my yoga practice, how I practiced at home, with the breathing synchronized with the stretching, that had a profound impact, as it does, on your blood flow, on head rushes, and with me and substance abuse, really clearing that up and getting and penetrating through that and regaining myself, even though I had gone through so many changes, obviously using drugs in college and just years of doing so many experiences. Who was I? I was 17. I left the house at 17 because I was born late, whatever, for the school year. So I went to college at 17, and I just got thrown into, like, what was that? I don't know. Like, I knew the wrestling, that part was dope. The facilities were dope. The NCAA Division I support of that, the OU and all of the athletics there. I mean, what an experience that most men will never go through. The kind of support system down to the athlete's kitchen and the athletic dorms and the athletic training facility and everything. Nothing with the common students, nothing. Like when you went to classes, you felt so different from them, like these normies. I felt like a soldier, and these were dorks that were all skinny, or frat guys that were skinny. Some of them played like athletics in high school, so they seemed stockier, but they were weak. And I didn't have game, but I could see the difference there. I went to school to wrestle. And when wrestling's done, because that doesn't go on forever, I found myself, whoa, what am I going to do with my life, business, and all that? And I found substances, and I found a relationship, and I moved in with her, and life, sucked. But, first world problems, because it's not like I'm starving. It's not like there's a war next door, like literally, you know what I mean? So, but it was definitely a deep state of confusion, and all of this energy from wrestling and all of this intelligence, and on all of my time and all of my life really being wound up in school. I mean, I was 21 when I stopped wrestling, 22, 23, finished a master's degree at like 24 or something. And all I had known all my life was school with some athletics. And it's like, what is life? And fast forward, I really started practicing yoga late 24. When I turned 25, I was in it. And so for 3-4 years, I'm clearing up the fog, and I'm finding myself, like, at 27, 28, who am I? I don't, like, man, I was a young boy, Boy Scout, student athlete in high school, son of my father, blah, 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 like the new tattoo, son of my, that's, if anybody doesn't see the tattoo. my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather, and my immigrant great-great-great-grandfather from France in 1737, right there. So that's, yes, I'm the son of all of that, but it seems like I had been absent from myself from 17 to, or at least let's say around 18, 19 is where I really lost myself. 18, 19 until like 25. And then it's like I came back to myself, and then 25 to like 27, I'm just like flailing, finding myself just latching onto my yoga practice for some solace, some peace, some rest and sleep and stillness. And I didn't know that was what I was seeking. I was just, entertained by it, and it felt really good. And I was experiencing peace, but I didn't have that language for it. It was just like, it's what it was. It was peace from so much thinking, useless thinking. And then 27, I got real exploratory about social dynamics, human relations, psychology, self-help. I started going into that. Around 28, I find AZD, and around 29, on my birthday, that's when I came out and visited AZD. And so I've been hooked ever since, because I saw the real deal above all other real deals that I had been, dealt with world-class professors, world-class wrestling, like Olympic and world champions. And I just explored other various subjects at a world-class level, I believe, and whatever, at a high level. And so I was coming across this after studying a bunch of world-class pickup artists and dating coaches and whatever. And then I meet AZD in person, and I had met some other guys in person and spoken with them on the phone, various people. And I was hooked. I was like, oh, and yoga, of course, world-class yoga instructors. So a lot of world-class in different things. And so at least 4 different subjects: wrestling, PhD, yoga, and social dynamics. I mean, Vince Kelvin and Hypnotica are world-class. I mean, who's doing it as long as them? There are more newer guys that have much more followers. They're more social media savvy. So they have 600,000, whatever, TikTok followers or whatever it is. But the OGs, I mean, there's no arguing, like the success and the longevity. A lot of the new guys, they won't last. And there's something to that, when you've been around for a while, still making it off of that. So AZD was the most realist of it all. And I come into it, and very soon into it, I'm hearing L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, stuff like that. It's not used too much. And nowadays he uses it even way, way less than before. But even back then when I started, this is like 2015, it was spoken of rarely, but authentically, especially with Dianetics. That was the main book that was talked about. And I got it. I got the book. I don't know what it was about my constitution that was not intimidated. I had the same knee-jerk reaction that people have. Cult, that's something weird. That church of what? Church of Scientology. Like, and even when I started reading Dianetics, because it took me many times to finish it years later. And, there was something I admired about it, but there was something I didn't get about it. And there was some reaction I had to it, even still, like naming this podcast with L. Ron Hubbard in the name. Who knows what kind of flags it'll get, and who won't listen, who will listen because of that name. It's so polarizing. And why is that? Because I didn't even know the guy. And as I'm reading the book, although I'm not getting a lot of it, I'm not getting any craziness, any cultishness, anything. I'm not getting anything that's like, I don't want to read this book. And I think through substances and the willingness to substance abuse, really, and the willingness to try something that everyone else had rejected, because I'd already done something that was so rejected by society. And the way I'd acted when I was on drugs was not myself. That's why I lost myself. And, so that's kind of what happens later on as I'm reading ethics and studying ethics. When you're out ethics about something, you want to forgive other people out ethics. So I had no problem reading L. Ron Hubbard, even if he was a cult leader, because I was like, fuck it. Like, it's not that I had been a cult leader, but I was like, I'll forgive him that and just test it out. Because I have met in person AZD and studied his stuff, and nothing doesn't make sense. Nothing is over my head. Nothing is without value. And it's all getting me ahead in relationships and understanding social dynamics. And it's just, whoa, why did nobody in university, and 12 and a half years university, why did nobody in high school, 12 years of high school, Jesus Christ, 24 and a half years in school, not including preschool, not including all the sports education and whatever. And nobody talked about communication, tonality, the language to get your message across and be heard. Just the, language arts was a class where I learned other shit like predicate and noun. And maybe that stuff is useful. A lot of the stuff, I don't remember learning arithmetic in school, but I had to learn it. Like, and so some things later you learn that I had to learn counting too, but I don't remember learning counting, but it was obviously necessary later for like arithmetic or whatever. So, hold on, I need to mute this video. So there are many things probably useful that I needed as building blocks for other things, but why did I not learn the science of communication? And why did I not learn men and women? I remember sex education and things about body parts, but why was there nothing about attitude, mood, emotions? And if it was, why was it passed over? So I don't know. I didn't get it. Why was the message not delivered in all those years? And so I was left as a numb 27 or 28 or 29-year-old, didn't know how to express myself, had all these genetic impulses towards women and money and value and power and prestige and acknowledgement and all of these things that I'm driven for, the pro survival, but I didn't know how to get them. I only know indirect ways to get them, like get the acknowledgement by being a champion wrestler, get the girls by being a amazing musician or a drug dealer or something. And really in the drugs, like create artificial feelings of survival, artificial feelings of doing better in life, artificial. Feel like you're doing better. And then you'll feel like you're doing worse afterwards. But no, you just endless high, you always feel like you're surviving. And I was astounded. So I'm studying this stuff and I get into L. Ron Hubbard and I'm reading it and it kind of makes sense along with other self-help stuff that I've learned. But remember, like 24 and a half years of education. So my mind is filled with ideas that have little to, it's narrow. It's the language of textbooks, the vocabulary of the public education system, and the grammar of it, the syntax, how you are putting the words together to point consciousness towards your inner experience, your subjective experience, and then all of these mystical subjects that, vibration and subconsciousness and universal consciousness. And, there are some more recent advents in science, like quantum physics is now we can use that language to kind of also describe metaphysics and blah, blah, blah. I think that was still around back then. It's just now through cosmic disclosure and all of the research that you can do, like, Above Majestic, if you watch Above Majestic or Cosmic Disclosure, like there's a whole world that's not the world they told us. And that's amazing. I was watching this thing the other day about this Viking stone that was found in Minnesota. A farmer dug it up in Minnesota, and it was this whole tablet that's really huge. It's like a headstone for a grave, but it's not a headstone. It's like the size of a big headstone. And it's got all these Viking runes, which is like the language of the Vikings, Nordics, carved into it. And it's all articulate. And it's basically a statement of, we claim this land, blah, blah, blah. And it's dated from the year 1300 or something. And it's in the center of the US. It's in Minnesota. Like you'd have to hike through all of America to get there. And then there's all these stories with Native Americans that the Vikings had come and they'd made a truce with them, a treaty or something. And that's why they interbred, even because that's why some of the natives had like hazel eyes and things. And so Vikings came out. Now, where are they? I don't know. They didn't succeed. They didn't. So it's not their land, whatever. They can claim a land, but then if you're not there for like 400 years before that, then, or if you're not there for 400 years after that, you don't till the land, it's not yours, and someone else comes in and takes over, then they take over. That's what it is. But why did I not know that? Why Christopher Columbus discovered America but never stepped foot on United States territory? But the Vikings, they didn't just, that's not even mentioned. And that's just basic. That's easy red pill. That's like something easy for people to digest. That they'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And they'd Google it and be like, oh, that's a fact. Wow, interesting. Bro, that's the beginning of the thread. If you pull the thread, it's like all of human history back to the Tower of Babel and evolution from monkeys. And it's like, it's not what they said it was. And so not only am I numb with 24 and a half years of education, I'm numb with the words of the wrong ideas. It's all misleading. And then the ego is built up thinking that you're right. And so when you're right, you don't look for other answers. You think you're right. You're not open and receptive as you could be if you just had an open, curious mind. So going back to L. Ron Hubbard. So I start reading it. It kind of makes sense. Circle back around to it. Through the years, I've grown to appreciate it much more. As I read Dianetics, now Ethics, 8008, and some other little books like the, what was it, Science of Survival, I think, a few other ebooks. And the writing is so thorough and makes sense of human consciousness in a way that is essential for game. And here's what I mean. All right, well, let's see. I'm not here trying to explain Dianetics and make it make sense to you. But let's say there are patterns of responses, patterns of behavior that we have in us that come from intense experiences from our past, that we made some internal decision, and that decision could be to yell or not, to go left or right, to, to succumb or act out angrily. We made some decisions and we were input with, well, anyway, we made some decisions about our behavior in those moments, and they get imprinted in us in a way that when the exciting circumstances are over with, that we go forward in life with those imprints in us that we are still acting out of. It may start to fade a little bit, but it's kind of like if you spill a stain on a white shirt or something, and then you wash it, you bleach it, whatever, but it's always a little there. Kind of like that. Makes it sound like we all have all these impressions that we'll never overcome or whatever. It's not exactly like that, because the system is more organic and changeable than, the finite cotton shirt with some red sauce on it or whatever. But it's kind of like that. The impression is always there until you revisit it in a way, a certain way. And so we end up accumulating hundreds of these, most people, some people thousands of these deeply intense experiences that we make some decisions right afterward, like right when that happens. And it's so intense, whatever's happening, that we don't really remember. It's not in conscious memory. It's like on the other side of conscious memory. Like I explained in some podcast some time ago, like if your unconscious mind was behind you and your conscious mind was in front of you, you can see in front of you, but no matter how I look, I can never see behind me. I can't. I can use a mirror or whatever, I get that, but like by myself, I cannot see what's behind me. There's just no way. I could turn around, but then what's behind me is the other way. And so you just can't see what decisions you made when you were unconscious, because intensity of experience is what makes the mind shut off, the conscious mind shut off. But the part of the mind that still controls the heartbeat and the breathing, and you're still alive. You're just not conscious. So sense data is coming in, lights, colors, heat, temperature, friction, sounds, pain, also internal sensations, or whatever. Words, even words are where it really gets motherfucked up. Words, because of multiple meanings to words, like good morning or weekday or whatever. Those double meanings really fuck with the subconscious mind. But we're not here to like disentangle all of that. I'm just explaining that there's many layers of impressions in us, deeply in us, that our behavior emanates from without us even knowing. It's like the slightly stained t-shirt that we're acting out of. And these layers get more or less activated, more or less bright, more or less influential over us, depending on things that we're not aware of, outside influences that we haven't connected to those behaviors. We don't see how the red light or that siren, or when they say that thing, or that particular kind of looking individual, or, the mindfuckery of it is that sometimes something will happen, something random, seemingly random in the environment, and we'll say something to ourselves, and we react to our own self-talk. We can trigger ourselves. It's stupid. It's so stupid. It's literally insane, like per the definition. And that's what these impressions are layers of temporary insanity, because we made a decision in a moment of unconsciousness that was for survival, but it was in that circumstance. And then we move forward with those same decisions, not revisiting them, just living out of that decision, because it was pro-survival and we don't revisit it. It was too intense to revisit. We were unconscious when we made the decision to be like that. So we don't even know that that's a decision, that how we are right now, you've decided. You get it? On deep levels, sometimes nonverbal, pre-verbal levels. But words are there. And that's a human thing. So, or at least an intelligent life thing. I mean, other creatures, other aliens or whatever, they have language too. So, seeing that this is what's happening, that this is what's happening with the mind, body, spirit, we are interacting through these layers of unconscious behaviors, and that the outside is triggering certain of these hundreds of layers that we have to more or less degree. And that's bringing on our moods, and it may be bringing on these fits of anger or sadness or depression, or what we've come to call darkness. Man, I'm really proud of this podcast, dude. I'm really weaving it together like a master. So this guy from Australia, he's been in IMC for several years, and he's done many camps. And kudos to guys that live really, really far and don't even get to come in person and haven't met other IMC guys and never met AZD in person, but they've spent so much time and energy learning this stuff and trying to apply it out there on their own. They see the greatness here. They, shout out to them. So this guy's messaging me, and I'm talking to him about the origins process. Like, some of you are on the origins camp. We have live people here on Zoom, and it's an intermediate camp that brings a person from the daily Alpha Academy class, or whatever it's called in the future, the morning class. Intermediate training is origins, and then you're eligible for and capable of advanced learning this month, called We Are Dragon's Blood. But these are the name of events and different characters that are cycled through that we're taught from. And these characters do a lot of things for us. One, the activation of imagination actually makes us present. There's a difference between daydreaming and creating with your imagination. And when you can create with your imagination, it makes you present and empowers you. And using your imagination to come present and to project your imagination into the future and even the past takes control over the system. You know how I said, like, you can't wash out the red in the shirt, but the mind is different. You can wash out. And it sounds bad when you say washing in mind, like mind washing, but you can clean out your impressions through intelligent use of your imagination, forward and backward projecting and creating. And so these characters that AZD teaches from helps us do that. And it aligns our imagination with the most useful, or the second most useful thing on planet Earth, and that's replication. The first most useful being survival. It helps us with survival too, because when you have layers on your consciousness that are affecting your mood and your output of communication, which is everything, how you communicate at the office, with your family, with your relationships, business, just how you communicate with yourself, that's going to change your reality. It'll change your mood in the moment, and it'll change your problems or successes of tomorrow, of next week, of next month, of next year. Eventually, your life accumulates off of your communications and the results of it. And what's affecting your communications, your emotions and your mood, your state of mind, that changes everything. Your tonality, what words you decide to use, your body language that comes along with it. And you don't realize how much that's affecting people in your world, because you have been you all your life. You've made decisions along the way to create you. And so you've been getting consistent results as per your character. So looking at your character from outside of you, because your character's made up, but you are not. You are real. You, whoever you are in there. You're not your name. You. Yeah, you. You are real. You are imagining yourself, your life, who you are, what it all means to you. Yes, there's really a rock there. You don't have to imagine the rock there, but what's it mean to you? Why do you think about it when it's not right in front of you? Maybe a rock isn't the best example, but we're always thinking and we're reacting to our thoughts. And those are running on the railroad lines of grooves in our consciousness, in our subconsciousness. We're running patterns. And another way of those patterns is, what L. Hubbard talks about, and he really breaks it down and spells it out in a way that's, the modern language of mystic yoga, ancient yoga. It's the same thing, ancient Buddhism, how they explain consciousness. So this is important for AZD's game and for all of our game. because when you're interacting with the woman, it's such a deep, bond that you have with the woman. Whoever, it's not every woman, but I mean, your relationships with female, all the way from mom to any other female relatives to mates, all the way to the new girls you're talking to and stranger girls that you haven't even started talking to. Any girl in your consciousness, your relationship to the female form of human is so deeply genetic. That's going to trigger more. It's going to trigger you in ways that nothing else in the world can. It's funny. Andrew Tate had some video about like a female relationship can get, when she supports you, gives you, it's something like a kind of power that you can find nowhere else in the universe. And it's like, dude, she can trigger you like nothing else in the universe. Thanos could come down and like slaughter your family. You still wouldn't get as triggered as what a woman does. Or I mean, you might get triggered, but it would be different. Like there's things that only the woman can do because of your relationship to mom and women growing up and all that stuff. And the decisions you made in traumatic experiences. It doesn't have to be like you were getting beat around or electrified or something. It could be remorse or guilt or grief. Like if something's taken from you or somebody dies or your dog dies and some bitch says something to you that's rude and it goes in there and you make some decision how to act right after that. So the process that AZD teaches, origins, how we teach it, and the ongoing advanced process. Another way of saying advanced camps is advanced processes of the mind that serves many purposes. Yes, we are relationship experts. We're experts of psychology and communication. And so how to have control over the machine and the instrument to communicate. And then when we have the power, when we have the reins of our communication, what would we do with it? What would we want to do with it? We want to make money and have women. Ain't no shame in admitting the truth. Why wouldn't we? And quality women and quality of money. How did you earn your money? I could go out and be a male stripper, or I could go, feed a soup kitchen, or I could, be an engineer somewhere, help make someone else a bunch of money and improve whatever that industry is. Or I could do IMC. Spread awareness of this very, very vital technology that's not taught really anywhere. There are bits and pieces. The most relevant pieces would be Scientology, would be pickup artists, would be yoga and other ancient mystic lineages, and would be possibly the self-help industry. Like, so if you combine all those things, and then also perhaps to a lesser degree, martial arts, the mental teachings of martial arts, definitely the mysticism and the ancient mysticism. But as far as like martial arts is here, I think it's to less degree than all those, but still very important. And then there's all kinds of other influences here, but none of them have it very well. And they're all suffering on women except the pickup artists, but they are too, because they're beta and they're not as well holistic. So they're suffering because a man is suffering if he's in a beta dynamic with women. So it's important to AZD's game and the game that we have because we need presence. And the world is going to trigger you in ways that takes you out of presence and makes you reactive. And especially the woman deep in relationship, when you're alone, when it's just you two in the room, man, or when you're on a drive or whatever, it happens at weird times. And understanding that about the mind and understanding how we put ethics in on ourselves has been so instrumental to me persisting in this line of living. I don't even want to call it a line of work, in this monk life. See, I could be a monk and go away, and that's what they do. They go away to retreats, so it destimulates their mind. They're away from stimuli. And so they don't get triggered because they've gone far away from home, so there's nobody and nothing familiar that reminds them of some traumatic shit that happened. And if they do happen to come across something, a certain kind of tree or a sound or whatever, someone comes and visits them, then they're far away from many influences and they're practicing self-control and they're limiting their sensory input. But that's a very reclusive way to go about it. I don't know that it does the same thing or to the same good that we do, because we're in the world. So we're cleaning out our system while interacting with the world. So while we're mastering the world, mastering how to communicate in all of the situations relevant to our life, to get ahead, to survive better, while we're materialistic like that, doing that, winning the game of life, we are also monks, cleaning out our system, cleaning out the patterns of our impressions and our actions and decisions so that we can step to the side quantum-wise, like step into a new universe of being, because I am real, but my character is not. My personality is not. It's an illusion that will be gone in thin air when I'm gone, and maybe just left as a little impression in people, whoever watches my videos or knew me in person. And then that'll be gone when they're gone. And hopefully, you know, we build a legacy and I'm known for a trillion years. And, you know, what would I have to do to be known for a trillion years in this universe? I'd have to do some really damn good work. Man, I'm thinking small. Shit. That was amazing. I just said that. There's even just thinking like, man, a trillion years, I'd have to outlive the planet. I have to be so vital to the planet. I don't even know if Jesus's name will last for a trillion years. Maybe, probably. It almost sounds blasphemous to even say that, but thinking like that literally is expanding my mind tremendously. So presence and character development. The world of relationships is not what it once was. And truth be told, I think it's going for the better, honestly. It's getting more difficult, but in good ways. That women, I think, are finding, and they will continue to find for the next 10 or 20 years or however long it takes, that the decisions of feminism and their lifestyles is very unfulfilling. It does some things that are good. You know, it's good for the child to leave home and see how difficult it is out in the world, learn, get their knocks, come back home and come back home humbly. And that's what's about to happen to women. Women are about to come back home to the man and say, I don't want to do that anymore. I have a new appreciation for what you did. Meanwhile, while they're gone, the men have to check themselves and be like, man, I can't get this woman to stick. What do I have to do? Now, most men are going to submit and succumb and do weird things, but that will be revealed as the weaker option because we're in a globalist society. So we're going to see all the options. So when men step forward with their alpha behavior and they're getting beautiful women, and there's loyalty, trust, honesty, and integrity in these relationships, no apology, you'll be forced to see that. You'll have to see that. It'd be like seeing UFO. Like first time, you're like, nah, it's a trick. Second time, you're like, it's camera angle. And you see enough and hear enough credible witnesses, and you're like, fuck. I've been living my life assuming that's not real. I've been living my life assuming the government's not hiding a whole world, a whole universe of technology 1,000 years ahead that they're just hiding. And some of them have access to, and they're living incredible lives in space, on other planets, and other dimensions, warping, shifting, interacting with aliens. I wouldn't exchange my life now for that, but it's like, fuck, man, let me let go of the ideas that I have that are so deep ingrained in me that, you know, even we'll get triggered when those ideas are questioned. When your ideas of religion, when your ideas of how the world works, how the, you know, for me, like the geology, there's a honeycomb in the earth. So there's big holes in the crust, giant holes the size of states, that ecosystems live there, and they've evolved totally different from surface ecosystems. That's a hard reality for a PhD. I never heard that. That's where my PhD is in. That's my subject. So it's like, what? You sure? Man. So my PhD is bullshit? Fuck. I guess it represents hard work and discipline and blah, blah, blah. But you mean the information that it represents, my environmental science PhD, is nonsense? Damn. Don't I feel duped? You know how guys must feel when they find out at the kid's 18th birthday that it was never his? Man, I feel like my education is kind of like that. It's not quite that, but I'm all indebted to the school system and whatever to get a piece of paper about bullshit. It's like, whoa, man. So I think there's going to be a coming home of women to men. Men are going to have to realize that their character wasn't keeping women, that you can't keep a woman around with force, which is also yelling or anger, that, that worked in isolated society, or when, travel and transport and occupations and earning money and and the internet and all these things weren't available to women. They're still going to be unfulfilled with that. But if it's a question of unfulfillment with a man or unfulfillment living a life as a man, a lot of them are going to choose living life as a man, because they're short-sighted. In the long term, in the short term, it's better. In the long term, I don't know if it's better. It's probably equivalent. It'll be worse in the later half of life, but overall, it's like averages out, versus being in life with a man that you hate and grow to hate, but you're secure. So it's just the rare few who can satisfy the woman for a long enough time that she voluntarily stays. And so in order to stay, she needs to fully submit 100%. 100%, not 110%. That's not possible. Not 99%. It's not enough. 100%. Or I'm not committed. And I don't even have to be committed if she's 100% committed. But if you want any hope here, you're 100%, because it's to your benefit more than mine. You're basically, I'm adding weight on, because I'm a man on a path. I'm a man aligned with the tribe, and everybody in the tribe is on a path. And this path is so unplugged from the normal guy out there and the normal society out there. They're just sinking in deep quicksand of their own mind. They're just getting more deeply enmeshed and never revisiting their consciousness. Meanwhile, we living the monk life, living on the floor, sleeping on the floor rather, early wake ups, cold showers, fitness and fight training every day, meditation every day, watching what you eat every day, studying philosophy every day. That's what every man in IMC Nation does. Every single man. That's the basic. That's the basic of it. Then they're also showing up to class or watching a recording every day that has to do with upgrading the mind, using the imagination, communication skills, and the most recent innovations of how to relate with women. And then, of course, the interdialogue of it, the mastermind of it. And so we all advance. And along the way, you will advance enough, let's say 10 times more advanced than when you started. When you're 10x when you started, that's when you'll probably be capable of a proper dynamic with a woman, where you're dominant, she's submissive, and you lead, she follows. Now, if you keep that going, will be dependent on how much you keep studying. You got to stick with it. And because whole new levels and whole new devils will reveal themselves. Then when you 10x your power again, then you'll be capable of 2 women. So when you're 100 times more powerful than when you started mentally, then you'll be capable of holding down 2 women effortlessly. Meaning you just move forward with life and they keep orbiting you. You go left, they go left. You go right, they go right. You just have to tell them. Whereas before, you go left, they go right, you change direction, you go right again. Or you're with 2 women and they're spiraling in weird, erratic behaviors, and you're just kind of following them around. That's what guys, they think they're players. They have 2 girls, but really they're just following 2 women around. Versus having 2 women where you're moving through life and they're orbiting you. I think this is making sense. That's why everybody's staying on and watching for so long. Okay, but we're going to wrap it up right now. So, very important, ethics, Dianetics. Those are advanced readings. You'll probably never get to it. Most people who join will never get to it. And, I think that'll limit you, because understanding when you dip in your mood, you've behaved in some way that you're not proud of, and that you compromise yourself on some level. And it's not a problem, man. You're not going to fucking hell. You just got to address it. And you need awareness. You need confront. You got to be able to confront the fact that you fell short for yourself. And that's what's so difficult living with AZD, because he doesn't slow down for you. He doesn't dumb himself down. He doesn't be less successful than you. And you have to confront that, one, you're being reactive because you're talking to yourself, or something, you're seeing something that's re-stimulating a part of you that's not you, but you got to get aware. So you got to stay on your process every day, be using your imagination, and stay on everything else in the process. And then the other thing, where you see that there's 2 arms, 2 legs, a voice, the same language, and you could do the same things. Why aren't you? Your personality is made up. It's an illusion. You're capable of all the correct gestures, actions, words, things to make all your dreams come true. If it's humanly possible, you could do it. Why aren't you accessing it? Well, because it's a needle in the haystack, man. You got to find the code, the key code entry access to success for you in this universe. And that will require your imagination. It will require persistence. And it probably requires a leader, teacher, someone that you can learn from to shortcut your path through the mud and the muck. And society's changing and everything's against you. And it's not easy. I don't know how many will succeed, but I'll die trying. That's what I know. Or I'll succeed. I'm already succeeding in that fact. I'm the yogi that if you tell me I have 1 billion lifetimes of prayer before I meet God, I'll say, well, right on. I guess I'll keep praying because that's a finite amount. I just got to whittle away at it. Keep praying. Because if I stop praying, it's still 1 billion lifetimes. It'll be 1 billion when I start up again. So I'm going to do it. And I've made that decision for myself. So the study of those books, this path, it's very important. And lecturing mostly to an internal audience of guys that are on IMC that are on the Zoom. People on Instagram, the other Instagram cut out, but this Instagram, they probably liked it. People on the podcast platforms, let me know what you thought about it. Comment, follow, of course, and hopefully it did you some good. You know, this is the mixture of game with Scientology. And it's like, what the fuck is that? Scientologists aren't good with women. And people who practice game are just as dorky and nerdy about Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's writing as anybody else in the world. So this crossing of these two subjects is what makes this such a world-class movement of philosophy, so cutting edge and so successful. Because to do what we're doing with multiple women, with the most beautiful women, also in Silicon Valley, man, Jose, not a lot of women here. And just what we're doing in the world, the feminist culture of today is so amazing that until you try it, you don't see how much horsepower, intelligence, and resilience is needed to make it work the way we work with our private parties and our TikToks and social medias and the philosophy we put out there and the loyalty of the people that are learning this stuff. It doesn't exist out in there in the world. And if it does, it would be some other very suppressed organization like this that's probably doing something amazing. There's a lot of things in the world I'm probably not aware of, but I am aware of what I'm aware of and the thousands of guys I've talked to and all of the industries and all of my life experience that I've explained, like on this episode and past episodes. And what I'm seeing with, like I said, with all the world class, the yoga and the PhD and the wrestling and of course game that I've seen, this is not only just the world class game, it's world class of all those world classes. And so this is a high level world class. And it's something so vital that's rare to be learned, rare to be taught. And what it takes to learn this properly is seeing it for what it is, that the value that it is, the $20 million diamonds that it is. And what are you holding on to that's preventing you from upgrading? It could be possessions. It could be limitations. It could be habits. It could be relationships to women or your family or something that's holding you back that you're holding on to, and it's just holding you back. That's it. You. And I don't pretend to understand everybody's journey, but I know it's a journey, and you'll have to go through it, and I went through what I went through, and I can speak through what I went through, and I believe if I can do it, you can do it. And where there's a will, there's a way. And if you want it bad enough, then there's a way to make it happen. That it's all in a state of mind. And if it's going to be, it's going to be up to me. That's you. See you on the next episode. Jay Guru Dev. Os.